I wanted to also, a little shout out to our exec team, HCFA's exec team, Lizzie, Daniel, David, and Kate. I just want to commend them. Mark Twain said, everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. So here's how that matches here. Everyone talks about what I'm about to talk about tonight and what Dinah talks about here at Harvard, but nobody can done much about it, right? They have not only identified a real issue on this campus particularly, it's alive and well here, but they've also been trying to do something about it. They've raised awareness, and we're taking some steps to just open up the lines of conversation, right? And so thank you so much. Well done. Yeah, this is a really something with pretty serious mental health and spiritual ramifications when we talk about, we're talking about identity and value and those kinds of things. I wonder, I know that this is true, that some of you, maybe many of you, on any given day, maybe it's after a rough day academically, maybe it's after one of those lonely weekends where nothing quite went right and you made a fool of yourself. Maybe it's one of those moments where you're like, how did I get here? And what am I doing here? You know, and those moments, for some of us, are even frequent. You know, there's 2,500 public and private four-year colleges in the United States alone. That's a lot of schools, and you all are inhabiting one pretty much at the very top. You take a step back and think about it this way too. There's 7 billion people on the planet. Only 7%, roughly, have the access privilege of going to a college. And that number has actually spiked up quite a bit in the last 10 years. It used to be about 1%. So basically, what I'm just simply saying is it's such an enormous privilege to be at a place, an institution like Harvard, but that is part of the problem. You're at the top of the food chain, you're in rarefied air, and it's the oxygen is a little lean up there sometimes. This is not news to you or to anyone else, and you're probably reminded of every time someone says, oh, where do you go to school? And I know that I experience this vicariously because people go, well, what do you do? Well, I work in a ministry with college students. Oh, where do you work at? And I'm Harvard. You know, what do you say? I mean, even when you say it, it might come out in your own, you know, your like intonation and all, just your normal voice, but you can't help but wonder if it sounds like, I go to Harvard College. You know, it's just always going to land that way, right? So, not only is it's a little bit awkward in those moments, but I think there's and I'm really not trying to do this, it's kind of like mom saying, eat your vegetables, there's people that are starving out there. You're at Harvard and at the top of the food chain. I'm not saying that to make you feel kind of guilty about it. I'm just saying it for this reason. You are in a place where when people learn that you go here and that you learn that you are going to come here, expectations just fly through the roof for everybody. I'm guessing that even your dog looked at you a little different, or you thought they did, when they learned that you were going to come here. I've also learned that expectations can be dangerous things. I mean, there's one thing, understandable, right? An unrealistic expectation sets us up for disappointment, etc. But how about a realistic expectation? Here's a realistic expectation. Man, you're going to Harvard? You've got, you know, the golden ticket here. Not only do we have enormous expectations for you, but we also have a bit of a prescription for you. This is what your life should look like if you go to a university like Harvard, right? People tell you, or it comes maybe out of you as well. It's like, oh my goodness, I have to live up to this. So you arrive, not only you have to kind of live up to this idea, but you have to prove that you belong. But then that's not really enough either, because you have to also, right, impress people, ideally, because really geniuses are the only ones that are really respected here, and it's actually true in the general culture, right? You have to be exceptional. You just do, because you're here. And I don't want to, that's an enormous amount of pressure. It really is. It's a bit of a burden. I have a suspicion that some of you are like, at any given day, wishing you were somewhere else where the spotlight isn't so bright and the pressure doesn't feel so heavy. So I've noted over time that a lot of students experience Harvard as a very unforgiving place. It's like succeed or else. Succeed or what else? There is no other, there's no really margin, there's room to fail here. And so our fear of failure is a powerful motivator, right? So it motivates. Maybe our competitive juices kick in as well, and so that will fuel us to work hard, to stay up late. Here's the thing, though. If we succumb to what I've come to understand are these kind of insidious pressures and expectations, it's the cruelest of taskmasters that I know. It's relentless kind of thing, never satisfied, identity warping kind of governor if we go that direction, if we go with it. That kind of, those expectations could kind of follow us, haunt us for the rest of our lives, and I'm really not exaggerating that. Then there's always the problem, right, when, and some of you might not have experienced much failure before, but maybe here you have, and then what do? I saw a piece in CNN about 2 weeks ago that caught my eye because of what was shared, the quote that was shared about, from Ronda Rousey. Some of you know who Ronda Rousey is, right? Is from an interview with Ellen DeGeneres, and she, some of you know who she is, some of you don't. She's this, seemingly was an invincible martial arts kind of boxer person, right? And I didn't, I'm not into this, so I pulled up the video, just not. I guess she's quite impressive. And I pulled up the video where she was defeated not long ago. I watched as this other woman absolutely clocked her with a foot to the face about right here, knocked her teeth loose, just kind of decked her, and she was kind of went through the motions, and the fight didn't last long, and she was devastated. So what she reflected on in this interview was she's in a corner in the medical facility after this match, and this is what she was thinking, and I love this. Occasionally celebrities, in a really unfiltered way, just tell us what they're really thinking. And in this case, I think it was so helpful. Real. Honestly, I was sitting in the corner, and I was like, what am I anymore if I am not this? I was literally sitting there thinking about killing myself, and her own father committed suicide when she was 8. In that exact second, I'm like, I'm nothing. What do I do anymore? No one gives a, and then I'll replace word with excrement that rhymes with pit. No one gives that about me anymore without this. I love her honesty there. And what was revealed in that moment, in that defeat, and she was feeling it, was I don't think people are going to really give a rip about me much without this. She had shaped her identity around being this amazing, can't be defeated, right, boxer, but that was just taken away from her, was crushed. What would happen to you if this identity that I know is kind of enveloped you a bit naturally of being a Harvard student was taken away? What if your intellect, for some, say we're in, God forbid, an accident or something, your intellect was diminished, and what you have, this wonderful gift that you've possessed and really shaped, so your life has been shaped by it, was taken away. What would happen to us if something that we prized a lot was removed from us? What I want to get at in a few minutes before we look at a couple of parables from Jesus is there's a subtle at times but kind of slippery slope here. And I think Tim Keller is a pastor in New York City, New York Times bestseller, apologist extraordinaire, church in Manhattan, mingling with oftentimes with the rich and famous. Reflects on the seduction of success is one of the titles of a chapter in his book called Counterfeit Gods. I highly recommend that book. And he says this: in the end, achievement can't really answer the big questions. Who am I? What am I really worth? How do I face death? It gives the initial illusion of an answer. There's an initial rush of happiness that leads us to believe that we have arrived, been included, been accepted, and proved ourselves. However, the satisfaction quickly fades. Next slide. More than other idols, personal success and achievement lead to a sense that we ourselves are God, that our security and value rest in our wisdom, strength, and performance. To be the best at what you do, to be at the top of the heap, means no one is like you. You are supreme. And that word idol may or may not be familiar to you. It's a biblical word. It's a word that is unfortunately a common affliction in the human race. Calvin said that our hearts are idol factories. What he simply is saying is that we are inclined and naturally worship. We're worshipers. And the trouble, what has gone wrong in this world, is that we will worship just about anything and everything other than God and our Creator. We live as if, easily, many of us, as if He does not exist. And so it's up to us then to figure out what our niche is and to build our lives around something, and we will worship. Success is one of those, an easy one. Why not? There is a measure of satisfaction in pursuing it, and off we go. Keller also helpfully in this chapter explains how we can diagnose whether or not success is something of an idol for us. He mentions two things. One, he says that there's a false sense of security that comes if our lives are shaped around success and our pursuits. How does that work? Well, just simply this. We see things work out, doors open. When we put our minds to something, our hands to something, it works, and there's affirmation, and we earn some money, build things, gain respect. I mean, if that's our track record, it's not long before we're thinking life is just like that, right? And our expectations again rise, and we're like, nothing can stop me. But it isn't long before something comes and stops us, derails us, challenges that. And then what do? What he noted is something that I've noted as well, is that if things have gone well for us in much of our lives and those expectations grow, and we haven't really experienced failure, especially at a younger age, like many in the world do, living a more kind of a brutal existence, then we don't deal well with setbacks. It feels like our knees are chopped out from under us when something doesn't go right. And so he notes that. The other thing that he notes is that we tend to have a distorted view of ourselves. And what he simply means by that is if we grow to be experts in one field or realm, it's easy for us, this is what human egos do, is to think that we're experts in every field. And we have an opinion on everything, and we become, one of those extra kind of critical people. So is this me? Are these features? I would add one more, and that would be, and this is something that I experienced over time, we just think too much about ourselves. We're thinking a little too much about what's going on in us, not much about those around us, and we really, really care about what other people think about us. These are all signs, perhaps, that success is too big of a deal for us. I want to shift gears and just talk for a couple of minutes. Visit two parables briefly. Now, if you're a Bible student at all, you might know that Jesus taught in parables all the time. In fact, about a third of the teachings that we have recorded in the four Gospels in the New Testament are in the form of parables, stories that he would tell in order to relay a spiritual truth. There's about 50 of them in the New Testament, so I encourage, if you've never read them, read them. They're amazing. They'll mess with your mind. They'll challenge you. I want to read two that are connected to talents and success. The first one we'll spend a little bit longer on, a parable of the talents. Next slide, please. All right. Wow, magical. Okay. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. In this parable, the man is God, and the servants are people under his care. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, and to each one according to his ability. Italics are mine. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once, traded with them, and made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now a talent it literally means a measure of money, a weight. So again, with parables, you don't look at every detail and kind of look at it literally. What you do is you look for the bigger points. And the point is simply that people have varying abilities. That's just true. And according then to those abilities, God apparently endows that person with opportunities. I think that would be a legit way to translate this into our real lives. Next slide, please. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. There is value in work. Let me just slide that comment in. We have been entrusted as human beings, can't defend this in the moment, but we have been entrusted by God with abilities and gifts to be used. And there's great value in work. I'll have to stop with that. And I love the italics here. Same verdict with the 2. Person with the 2 talents. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master. Here's what I want to just highlight for a moment as we talk about this. God very much wants to be a part of our lives and in the mix, and a part of our futures, and a part of our decisions about where we will go and what we will do. He endowed us, not only endowed us with these gifts, but there is, when we dial into this, when we understand this, when we enter into a relationship with God, as we'll see in a few moments through Christ, there is this relationship we have that we can enjoy where our work can actually be deeply, deeply satisfying. Not only for us, if we were flying solo, doing it alone, in a moment, oh, I feel good, that worked out, people like me, but even greater than that, entering into the joy of finding a great deal of satisfaction in reflecting on what we have done before God. It's the coolest thing. what's amazing about it is we begin to look at the gifts that we've received differently. First of all, Paul's very clear about this too, is like everything that we have is from God. We can't take credit for anything. Something that is annoying to us all, right, is when someone steals credit for something. When we ignore God, or we don't include and we don't acknowledge that he's the gift giver, it's kind of annoying, honestly. He must be annoyed that we are not acknowledging, giving credit where credit is due. Here's where the pleasure comes in. And this is what frees us from jealousy as well. When I see gifts that you possess, and over time, it's just been easier and easier for me to just pick them out and to see them. God-given kind of talents and gifts. I marvel. And I marvel not at you like you're this amazing, terrific, special person, though you are just inherently, and everyone is. But I marvel that you possess a piece of God, or a reflection of his creativity, of his ability, of his magnificence. You actually possess it. And when we possess it and when we use it for his glory, there's a great deal of satisfaction in it. Last stop, the one who buried it. Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went, hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You know that I reap where I have not sown, gather where I have scattered no seed. Then you ought to have vested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. Here's another of the main points in the parable of the talents. If we waste our gifts, it falls in a category of sin, that's a great loss. For someone to sit on their gifts, to bury them, to not use them as they were intended to be used is a grievous thing. And it is something that we don't want to do. I think there's kind of a corollary lesson here, and that would be to kind of hoard a gift that I've been given and to look at and to understand as just being for me. I think that is also a grievous thing, in a way, perhaps in which we essentially might bury talents that would otherwise be better used. I need to, Good Will Hunting, I love that movie. There's a number of scenes. I asked around, and you all, even though it was released when you were born, most of you, I think, are familiar with it. Basically, there's so many interesting connections to the You Are More campaign, actually, in that movie. You have the genius kid, Southie in Boston, who's with an underprivileged background and abuse in his background, and this talent, right? And it surfaces. He's made known, and yet he's reluctant to go after it for a lot of different reasons. There's one scene late in the movie where Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are drinking a beer over a car on break in a construction site. Do y'all remember that scene? There's a lot of F-bombs in there, so I can't share exactly the dialogue there either. So it goes along, but Ben Affleck basically at the end of the conversation says, it would be prudent of you, Matt. We didn't know. Not exactly. He talks about that 10 seconds, his highlight of every day was the 10 seconds when he'd go to pick him up for work, and that just the hope, the wish that one day Matt Damon would be gone. And gone meant that he would be going to, as he put it, kind of cash in his lottery ticket and to use this gift that he said, don't you dare, roughly, waste this gift, this amazing gift that you've been given. That's the basic fundamental point in the parable of the talents, but there are the other lessons. Let me wrap up here with, get a little more personal. I've shared this before with some folks in HCFA, so forgive the repeat, but I have two sons. Go ahead and flash the picture up there. Next one. There they are. Jonathan and Luke, they're awesome. Luke is 16. He's in the wheelchair. Jonathan just turned 14. Another picture. Well, there's two of them. I tell you what, I love being a father. It's my favorite thing in the world. And here's the thing. Luke, on the spectrum of abilities, and I do not believe that this is a coincidence. I believe that this reality in our family, which has been a challenging one, is actually for you. That there's value in here for you. Now, listen to how this works. On the spectrum of abilities, Jonathan and Luke fall on opposite ends. Luke can do next to nothing. He's still in diapers and he has to be cared for. And he's there, he understands in some degree, but he only understands in a given moment his immediate surroundings. And he loves people. And he's kind of dialed in that way. But he can't do next to anything. Jonathan, on the other hand, is you. Rewind about 5 years. He's you. And he can do everything. And anything he tries, it works out, and he has these amazing talents. And here they are, these two boys living inside of our household. And here's what I want you to understand, to hear. Simply this. I love my two boys the same. My love for them is not based on what they can do or not do. It really isn't. Like, not at all. And I know that this is true. You have to believe me. When we go out in public, you might think, well, kind of proudly walk with Jonathan right anywhere. And with Luke, we maybe keep him at home. Not the case. I take Jonathan and Luke anywhere. I'm as proud as can be for both of them. My love for them is fixed. It's set. It's done. Nothing can change it. And so here, how about expectations? My expectations for Luke are low, okay? Well, why wouldn't they be? There's not much he can do. What he can do is commensurate with his just gifts. And here's the thing, and I got to weave this in. He might be the most impressive person in our family, actually, because he gets relationship and he loves really well, much better than I do. Gifts, Paul says in Corinthians, pass away, but love will not pass away. He's actually, I think, has it over all of us. But then Jonathan, I do have some expectations for him in that it's like, dude, don't waste this. And fortunately, he's in an age so far, he just enjoys the creating and the discovery and he enjoys it all. And so I don't have to make him do anything. He just does it. In fact, I'm just saying, you need to slow down and relax a little bit and not take yourself so seriously. That's my counsel for him, honestly. A picture that I hope you can remember. As we segue, I'll just finish up here. I'm out of time. I want to encourage you, I hope something has landed, as memorable as for you tonight. But we're going to create a little bit of space in the next 5-10 minutes or so. The worship team is going to play a little bit. I want to invite you to just stay in the moment, if there is a moment, and to just reflect on anything that might have stuck, anything that you noted, anything that you're thinking about. And I want to encourage you to pray. And I want to encourage you, I'm guessing there's a couple of categories or groups of people here. Some of our guests, I don't know you, there's some faces I don't know here, may not have a faith background. You might never have really thought that much about it. Maybe it was out of the kindness of your heart that you just said, sure, I'll come to this meeting, and you respected your friend and you just came along for that reason. And you might be sitting there going, this is interesting. I'd like to, my encouragement to you would be to consider Christianity, but and specifically to consider the person of Jesus Christ. You may or may not have a good read on Christianity through people that you know that profess to be Christians. What I've found over time is that sometimes as Christians we can do a little damage, and that kind of people are repelled a bit by going, if that's what a Christian looks like, no thank you. If that's happened to you, I'd encourage you to please forgive and move beyond that poor example that you might have had, and to really investigate, to look at the person of Jesus Christ. There's no close second in human history. There's no person that has had the influence that Jesus Christ has. It deserves our attention and our investigation, right? To consider his claims. C.S. Lewis very helpfully in his book Mere Christianity, which I would also recommend to you, framed it this way. He said, Jesus' claims were so crazy, radical, saying things like, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, you've seen God, claiming to forgive sins, accepting it when people would worship him, just crazy stuff. He said he's either a Lord, liar, or lunatic. There is no other option. Sometimes I think we from a distance we can go, oh, maybe a good moral teacher. It's like, no, he's either kind of nuts or he intentionally, for some reason, was deceiving people, though it led to the cross. That doesn't make much sense. Or he was actually who he said he was. And so I invite you, please, consider the claims of Christ. It's easy to do. Read in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John in the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke house those 50-some parables. You'll find them fascinating. John, close disciple, writes from a little bit of a different angle. Any of those Gospels, you will learn about Jesus. I encourage you to do that. There's also a couple of books, the Keller books are great. Prodigal God, Counterfeit Gods, and then Mere Christianity. I encourage you to go there. But tonight even, just as best that you know how, just open that conversation with God and say, is there anything here? Seriously? Is this real? I'd encourage you to do that. Secondly, some of y'all might be kind of a prodigal-like. Let's look at one more passage very quickly. The parable of the prodigal son. I'll just read just a portion of it because it's also about gifts. When he came to himself, here's what happened. There's two sons. One is like, Dad, give me my inheritance. I'm out of here. And the father reluctantly gave him his inheritance, this monetary amount, right? This gift, and off the son went and spent it and partied and did what he wanted to do, and that didn't go so well. And then he reached this point. When he came to himself, a very low place, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven before you, no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. Next slide, last one. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his hands and shoes on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate, enter into the joy of, right? There might be some of you that have a bit of a background. You once were in the game a bit, but you've kind of left it behind. Please understand God, as has been expressed, to be a father figure, the father truly, who would love nothing more than for you to come home. He's a father, and again, I'm a dim, poor reflection of it at times, who is not that concerned about your grades and what you're doing. He is very concerned about who you're becoming. And he's just welcoming you to come right back around. Come back home. You can do it in that 2 seconds. And then lastly, there might be some of you that could have given this talk tonight and even probably done a better job. You're conversant here. You're familiar with these concepts and these precepts. You're trying to live them. My encouragement for you is this. It's tough to embrace our identity in Jesus and to live differently than it seems like everybody else. It's tough to get off the success treadmill, right? And to actually look at your life and the gifts and the passions you have and go, I don't have to necessarily do what everybody else says that I should do with my golden ticket at Harvard. Some of you might be wrestling, and I know some of you are wrestling mightily with what will I do, who will I become. My encouragement for you is just to stay close to God, keep praying, surrender your life to Him, surrender yourself. And so maybe in these few minutes, just some suggestions about where you might want to go, you might want to use this time. If none of that landed for you, again, just a simple invitation to talk to God just right where you're at, where you're coming from. All right, let me pray for you, and as the worship team comes forward. Father, I pray for everyone in this room, wherever they are, that you would give us the strength, that we would have the courage, that we would dare to talk to you, to reach out to you. Lord, you say in your word that you're not far off, you're not far away. You've also given us access to you, restoration, relationship restored with you because of the death of your Son. Lord Jesus, we want to not only listen to you, but marvel at what you've done. You took the weight of our sins, all the imperfection, the nastiness, the grievous things. You took them on yourself. You paid for it on the cross, and you bridged us to the living God. Lord, I pray for any who are struggling tonight, those that are in the, whether or not they're going to show it or talk about it with somebody or ask for prayer, they're struggling. Lord, would you minister particularly to them? Jesus, you identified yourself as a good shepherd. Would you minister to them? Would you reveal yourself? It's in your name we pray.